Welcome to the Kapital News. I'm your host, Alex Karitis. Today is Monday, February 15th, 2021. Thank you so much for joining me. I hope you all enjoyed your weekend. Title of today's podcast, Impeached President's Day. Obviously, being President's Day today, the U.S. markets were closed, but we're still going to go over market performance because all of the other markets weren't closed. And the rest of the world is just waiting, ready and waiting for another $1.9 trillion worth of spending to be passed here in the United States. $1.9 trillion that we, of course, do not have, but this is what's buoying all of everybody's hopes and dreams right now, and we just have one market after the next taking off because the United States is acting like a crackpot banana republic. They don't care where the money comes from. As long as it's spent out into the system, stocks are going to keep going up until they don't. But market performance, we have the dollar index trading at 90.3, down 0.2%. That's a sizable loss in the currency markets. Let's see, who's the big gainer right now against the U.S. dollar? It looks like the New Zealand dollar is up about 0.2%. We have the euro against the dollar at $1.21. The British pound at $1.39 in change. This is a couple year and a half high against the U.S. dollar. We have the Aussie flirting with a 78 handle, and the New Zealand dollar, as just stated, a 72 handle, gaining 0.2% against the greenback. So this is further weakness with the U.S. dollar. We'll continue to monitor. Bitcoin hitting an all-time high, currently at $49,370 a coin, pulling back a little bit from its all-time high, but right around there, getting close to that 50,000. I guess that'll be a psychological number, if you will. Overnight futures trading, Dow Jones Industrial Average, S&P 500, and the NASDAQ 100 are all up about 0.1%. Japanese cash trade is up another 2 percentage points, gaining 620 points to trade at 30,704 points. Of course, that's in yen, so 30,704 yen, but still at a 30-year high. It still has a ways to go to hit its 1989 all-time high, but this is what happens when you have central government, central bank after central bank, printing like there's no tomorrow. And of course, the Bank of Japan is authorized, and they do so. They are authorized to buy Japanese ETFs, exchange-traded funds. This is what happens when you have a printing press. You can print money, you can counterfeit money. Let's call it what it is. You can counterfeit money, and then you can go out and you can buy assets with it. How can you possibly lose, right? Well, we're going to find out. Big rally across the pond today. UK markets, the FTSE 100 gaining 2.5%. German markets gaining 0.4%, French markets up 1.5%, Italian markets gaining 0.8%, and the Spanish markets gaining 1.8%. Australian cash trade up 0.6%. Chinese markets remain closed for the lunar holiday, and the Indian exchange gaining another 0.5%, trading at 52,300 points. The reason I mention this is because the Indian markets gave back, almost were in correction, about a 10% loss a few weeks ago. Took them down to about 46,000 points, and boom, a couple weeks later, we're at 52,300 points, an all-time high, off the back of nothing else than one BS narrative after the next, more hopes of more quote-unquote stimulus and central bank money printing. On the commodity front, where we're starting to see everything go up, we have WTI trading at $60.21. Yes, $60.21 a barrel. Brent, $63.53. Natural gas hanging on to that $3 handle at $3.05. Gold giving back a little bit, but trading up overnight, $1,822 an ounce. Silver was up today and remains up overnight, $27.71 per ounce. Look, oil. Okay, some Mideast tensions over the weekend. We continue, just to throw this in as part of the geopolitical discussion real quickly, because the main focus today is on the impeachment. But we still have Myanmar, obviously, a coup, a militarized coup, people protesting, the shutdowns, the blackouts, the internet getting shut down, et cetera, et cetera. This stuff is just getting started here, ladies and gentlemen. Of course, here in the U.S., we have a huge cold spell, storms going from coast to coast, knocking millions of people's power out. And of course, this is a prime example, as we're seeing, which becomes unfortunately laughable, but this is just the honesty of it. Windmills, they get icy. Solar panels get covered with snow. Then what do? Well, Texas is finding out the hard way, as is the rest of the country. Not so good, is it? Now, I'm all for green energy. I'm all for renewable sources of energy, but you cannot just demonize oil and natural gas, even coal for that matter, and throw in nuclear too, because they want to go after nuclear. Nuclear is still our base load. You have to have a base load that just runs constant, and then you can upshift and downshift other various plants, whether that's natural gas, coal, what have you. Even some of these other solar farms and windmill farms, whatever you want to call them. You have to have a base load. You just have to. What these idiots are going to come up with next, I mean, the $1.9 trillion is one thing. That's for COVID-19. That's for some other bailouts here and there. Wait till they get their hands on some sort of environmental package. How much that's going to cost us. Look out below. And a lot of it, unfortunately, is going to be wasteful, which is no surprise because that's what these people do. But we have the demand story. You have the disruptions now, right? The supply disruptions. You have plants and refineries being shut down. You have the Mideast turmoil. You have geopolitical tensions all over the place. And you have the money printing on at full blast. Well, not yet. They are going to find another gear, believe it or not. So this is just the perfect storm for commodity prices to keep going up, especially oil and natural gas. Well, gee, I wonder how long that's going to last, and I wonder what the effects are going to be on consumer prices. And we'll see what one central bank does after the next to handle this, or if they'll just simply ignore it. To round it out, Uncle Sam's 10-year junk note is yielding 1.24%. 1.24%. This is a recent high, if you will. It takes us back to where we were last year. And this has just been something that we obviously focus on here daily and bring it up as a constant reminder that the Federal Reserve is trapped. And now the question becomes, well, what are they going to do with this if these yields continue going higher, or at least maintain their position and start to consolidate at these higher levels? Because that's the 10-year junk note at 1.24. We had the U.S. 30-year long bond hitting 2%. All right? Again, a level we haven't seen since last year. This isn't off of growth. There is no growth. We go through all of the hard evidence, the hard data with respect to the real economy here all the time. There is no growth. There is further deterioration. You have several 100,000 Americans continuing to file unemployment claims every single week. We are about 4 weeks away from the 1-year anniversary of these lockdowns and that massive 6 million spike in initial jobless claims. Okay? That's how close we are to the 1-year anniversary of all of this, and we continue to see this type of deterioration. And with this $1.9 trillion monstrosity having a $15 minimum wage being thrown into it, it's just going to destroy millions of jobs. The Congressional Budget Office is already projecting 1.4 million job losses. Now, I haven't read the legislation. It has not been finalized, has not been fully voted on yet. So I don't know if they've given some sort of grace period as to when that $15 minimum wage is going to go into effect, but it matters not. The point is moot. They're going to pass it. It's coming. And this is going to destroy small businesses. It's going to destroy people's lives. And of course, the people cheering this on are the ones who are going to be most adversely affected by it. That's the irony of all of this. But that's a direct result of a failed education system. And of course, we know who runs the education system in this country, don't we? One central bank after the next keeping rates low. This time it's the Australian Reserve Bank of Australia, the RBA, maintaining rates at all-time lows, committing to throwing another 100 billion Australian dollars into the system as part of their quantitative easing program at a minimum, and they expect to keep their interest rates at all-time lows until at least 2024. Now, we'll see what the markets and if inflation has something to say about that, but at least that's what these greasy central bankers are claiming, that they are going to keep their rates in Australia low until at least 2024. Well, get out the balloons, the birthday cake, whatever you want to call it. The U.S. national debt. 4 years from now, we're having some fun with this, obviously, the time machine on the usdebtclock.org. I said it was going to hit $50 trillion most likely over the weekend, and sure as you know what in the woods, it did. $50 trillion, and this doesn't take into consideration the other spending that's coming down the pike. So $50 trillion 4 years from now. So get your grandkids, your kids, your great-grandkids, and cut a piece for your children and grandchildren who don't yet exist because they paid for it, okay? That's what you're celebrating, that they bought you the cake, all right? So we can have an economy in shambles, so that we can have an infrastructure coast to coast in shambles. And they're going to get to that too, and they're going to mess that up. They will most definitely mess up any type of infrastructure program as well. We talked about the massive amount of money that we're likely to spend this year alone. Could come in at $5 trillion. Could be more than that. Could definitely be more than that. And if you understand how big that number is, we could build, destroy, rebuild, destroy again, and rebuild infrastructure across this country, coast to coast, be the best the world has ever seen with $5 trillion. That's how much money that is. That's what we're going to spend this year alone, most likely. Again, it could be more by the time it's all said and done. Probably will be. And we're not going to have much of anything at all to show for it. Have you left the two-party system yet? Have you? I hope you have. How many more pieces of information and pieces of evidence do you need to understand that these people do not care about you? They want your vote. They want to manipulate you. They want to say what they have to say to get your vote. And that's it. So, the other thing, we're not going to have time to get to it today, but something we're going to have to talk about this week. The Federal Reserve obviously likes to put out those stress tests when it comes to the banking sector and say, well, if this scenario happens, will you be able to sustain your business? Well, one such scenario involves a 55% market collapse. 55%. Sounds like a lot. Oh boy, it is. But that'll basically just take us back to where we were during the depths of March of last year. And I could make the argument, and I did last year, that that was still too high a market. Because these markets are completely propped up by cheap money, and that has been the case since the great financial crisis, in this asinine, fraudulent economic experiment we call quantitative easing. It was supposed to be temporary. It's going on 12 years. And it's going to go a lot longer, so long as it holds up. So we'll have to have a discussion on that. Again, a 55% market collapse. It doesn't mean it's going to happen. But I will tell you, I go through these reports from time to time with the stress tests and what the Federal Reserve puts out there. And from time to time, what they stress test comes true. So be on the lookout for something there. Now on to President Trump's, or former President Trump's, second impeachment. Obviously, he was acquitted over the weekend, which was no surprise, but it was a vote of 57 to 43, so it was a majority, but it needs to be a two-thirds majority. 7 Republican senators, if you will, crossed the line to convict and remove the former president. Needed 67 total, so needed 17 Republicans to cross the line. That did not happen. That is not a surprise. But 17 Republicans in total voted for impeachment and conviction. 17 total. 10 in the House of Representatives and 7 U.S. senators. Other than that, they were perfectly fine. You know, you had a couple hundred Republicans defend that one House member who's talking about conspiracy theories and QAnon and all that stuff. A couple hundred supported her. A couple hundred supported the decertification of the electoral state or the electoral college process. 17 Republicans, only 17, voted for impeachment and conviction. Look, I'm not here to defend the Democratic Party. I'm not here to defend the Republican Party. I want them both gone. Both gone. And I think both of them are doing a fine job at running themselves out of town. But there's going to be a lot of damage in the wake. A couple things I want to read. I want to read one of my senators, who's a Republican, Pat Toomey, out of the state of Pennsylvania. He's retiring. Not that he's that old, but he is retiring from the Senate. But he did vote to convict the president. So because he's my senator, I want to take the time to read his statement. It's not that lengthy. And then the next one I want to go through, I'm not going to read it in its entirety. I'm sure some of you have seen this or have heard it, but that of Senate Minority Leader now, Mitch McConnell, because he basically did what former FBI Director Jim Comey did to Hillary Clinton back in 2016. When Jim Comey read her the Riot Act through the book at Hillary Clinton and then said, nah, I'm not going to do anything about it. That's exactly what Mitch McConnell did here, but with Donald Trump. So here is Senator Pat Toomey's response here. President Donald Trump's defense team made several accurate observations at the impeachment trial. Many elected Democrats did want to impeach President Trump from the moment he won the 2016 election. The mainstream media was unrelentingly biased and hostile to the president. Both often overlooked violent riots when perpetrated in favor of causes they found sympathetic last summer. However, these facts do not make President Trump's conduct in response to losing the 2020 election acceptable. He began with dishonest, systematic attempts to convince supporters that he had won. His lawful but unsuccessful legal challenges failed due to lack of evidence. Then, he applied intense pressure on state and local officials to reverse the election outcomes in their states. When these efforts failed, President Trump summoned thousands to Washington, D.C. and inflamed their passions by repeating disproven allegations about widespread fraud. He urged the mob to march on the Capitol for the explicit purpose of preventing Congress and the Vice President from formally certifying the results of the presidential election. All of this to hold on to power despite having legitimately lost. As a result of President Trump's actions for the first time in American history, the transfer of presidential power was not peaceful. Let me repeat that sentence. As a result of President Trump's actions, for the first time in American history, the transfer of presidential power was not peaceful. A lawless attempt to retain power by a president was one of the founders' greatest fears motivating the inclusion of the impeachment authorities in the U.S. Constitution. I was one of the 74 million Americans who voted for President Trump, in part because of the many accomplishments of his administration. Unfortunately, his behavior after the election betrayed the confidence millions of us placed in him. His betrayal of the Constitution and his oath of office required conviction. That is Senator Pat Toomey of the state of Pennsylvania. Very well said. Some things I disagree with in there, but I'm sure there's some political platitudes to keep some of the heat off of the phone calls and emails I'm sure he's receiving in his office. This is from Mitch McConnell. It's a lengthy statement. I'm not going to read it in its entirety, but you'll understand the purpose of it. January 6th was a disgrace. American citizens attacked their own government. They used terrorism to try to stop a specific piece of democratic business they did not like. Fellow Americans beat and bloodied our own police. They stormed the Senate floor. They tried to hunt down the Speaker of the House. They built a gallows and chanted about murdering the Vice President. They did this because they had been fed wild falsehoods by the most powerful man on earth. Because he was angry, he'd lost an election. Former President Trump's actions preceding the riot were a disgraceful dereliction of duty. The House accused the former president of, quote, incitement. That is a specific term from the criminal law. Let me put that to the side for one moment and reiterate something I said weeks ago. There is no question that President Trump is practically and morally responsible for provoking the events of that day. The people who stormed this building believed they were acting on the wishes and instructions of their president. And their having that belief was a foreseeable consequence of the growing crescendo of false statements, conspiracy theories, and reckless hyperbole, which the defeated president kept shouting into the largest megaphone on planet Earth. That's a very revealing statement. It's something I have been stating here for months prior to the election. When you have somebody who says, if I win, all's right in the universe. If I lose, it was rigged. This ain't the first character in human history to talk like this. It doesn't end well. The issue is not only the president's intemperate language on January 6th. It is not just his endorsement of remarks in which an associate urged trial by combat, that being Rudy Giuliani. It was also the entire manufactured atmosphere of looming catastrophe, the increasingly wild myths about a reverse landslide election that was being stolen in some secret coup by our now president. I defended the president's right to bring any complaints to our legal system. The legal system spoke. The Electoral College spoke. As I stood up and said clearly at that time, the election was settled. But that reality just opened a new chapter of even wilder and more unfounded claims. Good choice of words there, wilder, Mitch McConnell, because that's what the president said it was going to be if you come to Washington, D.C. on January 6th. He said it was going to be wild. The leader of the free world cannot spend weeks thundering that shadowy forces are stealing our country and then feign surprise when people believe him and do reckless things. Another great statement. Sadly, many politicians sometimes make overheated comments or use metaphors that unhinged listeners might take literally. This was different. This was an intensifying crescendo of conspiracy theories, orchestrated by an outgoing president who seemed determined to either overturn the voters' decision or else torch our institutions on the way out. The unconscionable behavior did not end when the violence began. Whatever our ex-president claims he thought might happen that day, whatever reaction he says he meant to produce, by that afternoon, he was watching the same live television as the rest of the world. A mob was assaulting the Capitol in his name. These criminals were carrying his banners, hanging his flags, and screaming their loyalty to him. It was obvious that only President Trump could end this. Former aides publicly begged him to do so. Loyal allies frantically called the administration, but the president did not act swiftly. He did not do his job. He didn't take steps so federal law could be faithfully executed and order restored. Instead, according to public reports, he watched television happily as the chaos unfolded. He kept pressing his scheme to overturn the election. Even after it was clear to any reasonable observer that Vice President Pence was in danger, even as the mob carrying Trump banners was beating cops and breaching perimeters, the president sent a further tweet attacking his vice president. Predictably and foreseeably under the circumstances, members of the mob seemed to interpret this as further inspiration to lawlessness and violence. Later, even when the president did half-heartedly begin calling for peace, he did not call right away for the riot to end. He did not tell the mob to depart even until later. And even then, with police officers bleeding and broken glass covering Capitol floors, he kept repeating election lies and praising the criminals. In recent weeks, our ex-president's associates have tried to use the 74 million Americans who voted to re-elect him as a kind of human shield against criticism. Anyone who decries his awful behavior is accused of insulting millions of voters. This is an absurd deflection. It most definitely is absurd. 74 million Americans did not invade the Capitol. Several hundred rioters did. And 74 million Americans did not engineer the campaign of disinformation and rage that provoked it. One person did. I have made my views of this episode very plain, but our system of government gave the Senate a specific task. The Constitution gives us a particular role. This body is not invited to act as the nation's overarching moral tribunal, etc., etc. It carries on from there. But interestingly, that's the last sentence where I'm leaving it off at. This body, meaning the Senate, is not invited to act as the nation's overarching moral tribunal. Why is that, Mitch? Is it because the Senate is a den of vipers filled with some of the biggest criminals this country's ever seen? Is that why some of the biggest scum of the earth walking around in the chambers of our government? Is that why? It didn't stop him 20 years ago from impeaching Slick Willie Clinton. Nobody died in that event. I mean, there were some extracurricular activities going on in the Oval Office. That didn't seem to stop Mitch McConnell from acting as some sort of moral character. Not in that one. Not Lindsey Graham, not a handful of other Republican senators who've been around for the past 20 years screwing this country over. Perfectly fine to attempt to throw Bill Clinton out of office, again, for some extracurricular activities in the Oval Office. I'm not defending it. But Monica Lewinsky got up and walked away. She didn't take a gunshot to the neck and die. That happened in the Capitol. Yeah. So, I mean, that's pretty plain to see. Mitch McConnell thinks the man's guilty, knows the man is guilty. Anybody with eyes and ears to see knows that the man is guilty, knows that the man should have been impeached, knows that he should have been removed and prevented from holding federal office again. Where's the remedy? Oh, well, he's been impeached. It's on his record. This man, Donald Trump, does not care about his record. Have you been paying attention to his character? Bankrupts several businesses, screws over small businesses and vendors, doesn't pay them. Has multiple affairs while he's married to multiple wives. Pays porn stars for sex. He doesn't care what's on his record. So prevent him from holding office again. You have the authority to do it. It should have been done. Now, the man is still obvious, even if you did convict him and prevent him from holding federal office ever again. Yeah, he can still act as a private citizen. He can still campaign for people. He can still go out and raise money. All of that, yada, yada, yada. And make no mistake, he's going to go out there at some point and raise more money from his most loyal of supporters. Not because he needs the money, but because he spotted a sucker, and they're going to give him what little money they have to give him. And they're going to do it. They're going to do it because they hang on every word of this guy. And that's what led several hundred of them to break into the Capitol and do what was done. This isn't a blanket statement that it's all 74 million voters. That's a ludicrous argument. I mean, that could always be an argument when it comes to voting against impeachment and conviction. Because you're talking about the president. Well, he was elected. Probably because millions of people voted for him. So what? Then there's no remedy to do anything if he oversteps his bounds? Abuses his power? Give me a break. Mitch McConnell, Lindsey Graham, etc., they can throw out Bill Clinton for doing what he did, but Donald Trump, throw the book at him, say he's guilty, and oh no, well, we're not the ones who should be doing this. Well, then who is? Who is? It's one thing in the case of a president who's done something in their second term. They can't run again. That's it. He can. Donald Trump can. The message needs to be sent. It's not just about this guy, it's about the next one. And I am telling you, because I know a lot of people didn't believe me several months ago when I said, when those words came out of this guy's mouth, if I win, perfect. If I lose, it's rigged. That was it. A disqualifying statement in and of itself. Put aside everything else that has been done. That statement alone was disqualifying enough, because you have to understand and respect history. That's what our government was founded upon. Our founders were students of history. This isn't about being the thought police. This is about understanding where you are in an empire that is being built, that's rising, that's peaking, that's collapsing, and the types of characters that rise to power in those various points in time, and what happens. That's why this Constitution was written, to prevent this type of person, this type of rhetoric to be used, and these positions of power to be abused. And when that happens, we have a document that deals with them. I mean, come on. Again, switch the names out. This just happens to be Trump. Okay? Get off of it. Republican, Democrat, because if the parties were reversed, it would be the same song and dance on the other side. Switch out the names. It's not Donald Trump who said this. It was Barack Obama who said this. Oh, now let's see what the Republicans and conservatives out there would be saying and doing right now. Oh, I wonder what Rush Limbaugh and Mark Levin would be saying about the Constitution right now, and Sean Hannity and Laura Ingraham. Oh, I wonder what they'd be saying if this was Barack Obama. Would they be singing the same song? Get over it. This is all theater. It's all circus. These people don't care about you. And Mitch McConnell said this, one, because it's true, but he didn't vote to convict and remove and to prevent Donald Trump from holding federal office again, because Mitch McConnell wants to become the leader of the Senate again. It's a 50-50 split. 2022 is just around the corner. And all he has to get is a couple senators, and he's got it. That's it. He doesn't want to piss these people off because, Mitch didn't vote. He voted against it. So, I guess we can keep him in there. And he got a lot of judges through, and he did a lot of things when it was the Trump administration. This guy's a player. We can trust him. That's all it is. It's about power. It's all about Mitch McConnell. That's all these people care about. They don't care about you. They don't give a damn about the Constitution. Wants to hide within some of these arguments of the Constitution, or say that they don't have the jurisdiction to do what was done. Well, Mitch, the Senate, the full Senate voted on that last week, that the Senate does have the jurisdiction to do what they were doing last week. Now, if you don't like it, you're going to have to go change the law, but that's how our system of government works. We have a Supreme Court, 9 justices. A lot of rulings come down 5-4. Very easily, if you had a different justice on the bench, it would have been 5-4 the other way. But guess what? When it comes down 5-4, whichever way they voted, that's it. You want to change it? Well, you can go back to court and try to get it reversed, or the Congress can change the law. That's how it works. Because otherwise, what Senator Mitch McConnell just said is, well, if you don't like what the Senate did or what the Congress did or what the Supreme Court does, just screw it. Don't follow the rules. That's what he is saying. That is our system of government. That was the vote. That's what they ruled on. I don't like a lot of things the government does to me, and I'm sure you feel the same way, but you follow the rules because you know what's going to happen to you if you don't. But Mitch McConnell and company, they think, well, I don't agree with the way they voted, so screw it. Yeah, he's guilty of sin, but I think the other way, and I'm more concerned about my power as opposed to what's right for the country. They'll reap what they sow, and the rest of us are going to have to pay for it. Impeached President's Day, there you have it. There's nothing to argue here. This is beyond the pale. We all witnessed it. Never should have happened. Peaceful transition of power is what is one of the things that defines us. Destroyed it. Just completely destroyed it because he's a crybaby. That's what he is. He was a crybaby before it was even over. I'm beside myself because I understood how dangerous that rhetoric was. And now we're all paying for it. And this is just a sideshow, too. That's the other pathetic thing when it all comes down to it. We're being looted trillions of dollars of us, our future selves, future generations, but don't pay any attention to that. Don't pay any attention to what's really going on. Impeached President's Day. Stay diversified, stay vigilant, stay with the Kapital News. I am Alex Karitis. Godspeed.